Hello and welcome back to our Bible study series looking at the book of Exodus. We are currently in the middle of the 10 plagues, looking at how God uses his power through Moses and Aaron to persuade Pharaoh to let his people free, to persuade Pharaoh to recognise the liberty and freedom of religious expression, of economic activity, freedom of movement, which he says is fundamental to their expression and identity as individuals and as a people, as a community. I should say, if you are troubled or concerned or affected by what we're talking about, particularly in light of what is happening in the world at the moment, in the Middle East at the moment, and of course I don't know exactly what will be happening when you're watching this. I know what is happening when I'm recording it. If you are affected, please do speak to someone, speak to me or speak to somebody at the church who can help you work through those things and understand some of the things that are going on and how we might appropriately respond. But we are in the middle of these plagues, and we pick the text up back at 9:8, the sixth plague, the boils, which come from taking handfuls of the soot which is left over because of the economic activity of the Egyptians, or in fact the Israelites for the Egyptians, because making bricks is what the Israelites had to do. Whether they were air dried or kiln dried, not sure, but perhaps it's from those bricks which the Israelites were tasked with making, which Moses now takes and scatters to become boils upon the people. Both humans and animals, and often we'll see this later on as well. The livestock, the animals, or not just the livestock, animals generally are included in the definition of people and community for the Israelites. And if we look back at Genesis, when the world was created, animals had that distinct relationship with humans, that we must look after them and tend them and care for them and name them and feed them. So that care continues here in the midst of this moment of crisis, and perhaps it's a reminder that even at times of crisis, even at times of oppression, we mustn't remember our calling and our identity, because by living into that calling for ourselves, and by rehumanizing ourselves, that is part of how we regain power in an abusive relationship. In this sixth plague, it's Moses who throws the soot. So now Moses is taking a little bit of power back. Previously Aaron's been the one to do all the physical manual actions. Now it's Moses. So there's a little bit of transfer of power there. Perhaps Moses is demonstrating how he can handle that power well, because once they get into the wilderness, it's Moses who is going to have to be that physical sign and physical conduit for the people's relationship with God. The magicians in this sixth plague are removed entirely from Pharaoh's presence. So they've had their power removed. Now their very presence is removed. And so we move on to the seventh plague, thunder and hail. A direct consequence now, God says, of Moses disobeying God, Pharaoh disobeying God. Remember, we've always got that option that Pharaoh will acknowledge the power of the God of the Hebrew people. I don't think God's even asking Pharaoh to put his faith and belief in God, although that might naturally follow from recognising God's power. All he wants is Pharaoh to permit the Israelite people to acknowledge their faith and to follow their religious practices. And we'll see how that idea is used in a moment. This seventh plague, then, there's quite a long discussion in this seventh plague over exactly what the relationship of Pharaoh is to the people, who the Israelite people are. 924, I think is interesting. Never has such heavy hail fallen in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. So what we're doing here is not just between Moses and Pharaoh, but it's very much between the people whom they lead. This is reminding Pharaoh and Moses of their leadership roles and the fact that in their discussions they are challenging the very ideas of the Egyptian and Israelite people as nations. What does it mean to be a nation? The nation of Egypt would probably say to submit to Pharaoh's authority. But Pharaoh's authority is being challenged. So the very identity, national identity of Egypt is being challenged. And the result of this is actually that Pharaoh acknowledges his sin, his sinfulness, which is a first step upon reconciliation. That's what we talked about in Lent. So there are good things that come of this. And there's this hint that acknowledging sinfulness, acknowledging that we get things wrong, is the first step to gaining power and reconciliation. But that doesn't happen. Still, he hardens his heart. And so we're on to the 8th plague, the 10th chapter of Exodus, and the locusts come, and now Pharaoh's response is a direct request for the forgiveness of sin. So we're getting there. We're teaching Pharaoh this the sort of step change program for reconciliation. He's getting there. He's acknowledged his sinfulness. He's requested forgiveness for sin, but still he hardens his heart and will not let the Israelite people go. And so we're on to the 9th plague, darkness. Darkness for 3 days nonetheless. Again, perhaps we're thinking ahead to Jesus' death. Darkness for 3 days is a symbol of divine power. That's as true in the crucifixion as it is in this 9th plague. And what does it do? But it removes many of Pharaoh's traditional forms of power, because the people cannot see one another. They cannot move about from where they are, and they have no economic, social, cultural, religious potential or power at all. They cannot move from where they are. That's 1023. And still Pharaoh is unwilling to let the people go. But nonetheless, after this 9th plague, he says, get away from me. Moses, he's scared of Moses. And remember, we saw at the beginning of the book of Exodus that fear leading people to make bad decisions, including Moses himself. And I think it's important, remembering that step change to reconciliation, acknowledging sinfulness and asking for forgiveness should not lead to fear, but lead to love and to a knowledge of our acceptedness. But that's not how it is for Pharaoh. And so we move on, not to the 10th plague itself, but to a warning of the 10th and final plague. And the pattern changes slightly here, because the 10th plague is of such importance and of such power that it takes a few chapters to narrate it. But in this 11th chapter, notice we get again what God tells Moses to do. And what does he tell Moses to do? But to empower the Israelite people, both men and women, that's 11:2, tell the people that every man and woman is to ask their neighbour, i.e. the Egyptians, to help them and to give them what they need. And of course the Egyptians will, because they can see the power of God. They've been subject to the first 9 plagues. It's only Pharaoh and his leadership that is preventing the reconciliation that God wants here. So God is calling this plague so that they can acknowledge that the power comes from him. And that is going to be an important lesson once they reach the wilderness and they leave Egypt. Again, they're taking their animals with them. That's an important part of the story. They're part of the people, part of the family, even if they have a slightly different relationship. But God is continually reminding the people that they have that responsibility to the land, to the animals in their care. And so they are preparing to leave, and still the Lord hardens Pharaoh's heart, so he does not let the people of Israel go out of his land. And that's where we leave chapter 11 of the book of Exodus. That's where we leave the build-up to this 10th and final and most momentous of plagues. We leave Pharaoh in hot anger, which I think is a wonderful phrase, an anger that has blinded his judgment. But with Israel, with that promise of distinction. That's 11:7. A distinction between Egypt and Israel. Not because, as we know from our faith, Egypt is to be condemned to destruction forever, but because God has a distinct role for the people of Israel, which continues to this day. And we shouldn't forget that in our as Christians. That distinction. You have a distinct role that will help consecrate you to God. That is the message for everyone that comes through in this book of Exodus and is fulfilled in Jesus Christ, because it is in Jesus that we find that calling for each of us, our distinct calling. I hope that's helped you navigate through those last 5 plagues. We'll look at the realization of the 10th plague and the Passover, which allows the Israelites to be saved from that 10th plague in the next week's reflection. Thank you for being with me, and I hope it's helped you understand some of those ideas, particularly about freedom and distinction, which come into our understanding of our redemption in God, our salvation in God, as we know and practice it. Thank you, and see you next time.